April 9th, 2019. This will be part 2 on starting strong seedlings. So, I have not gone in and wired DC fans on the greenhouse pie yet. I haven't had the time to set that project up. But I did go and bring a fan in here. This is a Vornado fan that a friend of mine gave me. These are pretty effective fans. And it's just a 110 volt AC fan. And I just set it up and it's pointed down at the seedlings so that we get good airflow across all of them. And I'm going to let you take a close look here, and you can see that those seedlings are all vibrating and shaking in that breeze as it moves across them. And you can see it on every single flat. You want to make sure that your airflow is precise and targeting exactly what you want to do. So let's talk about that for a minute. Exactly what do you want to do? Well, in the first part we talked about some trace mineral nutrition stuff and good moisture. I showed you how to manually stimulate good stem strength, and I talked about using fans for it. Drop my tag here. But I didn't go any deeper into it, so let me go a little deeper into it. One of the advantages you get by using a fan to do this job, and I still recommend going along and doing this every so often to make sure that those stem cells are getting as strong as possible. So one of the other things you get, one of the other advantages you get with the fan is you get good airflow across here, and that does a couple of things. Number one, that helps prevent molds and that sort of stuff from growing. Molds and fungi don't really like high airflow environments where things dry out, and it kind of prevents mold growth, so that's good. The other thing you get is good exchange of air across them, and that means good access of CO2 directly on the leaf surface. The leaves of the plant is where they take in CO2, and that's part of what drives the whole photosynthetic process. And so if you don't have good airflow across the leaf surface, there's less available CO2. With less available CO2, obviously they don't breathe as well, and you know what happens when humans don't breathe as well? We don't perform as well because we don't have the gases we need to carry on respiration. In this case, it's photosynthesis, which does have a respiration cycle on some plants. We won't get into the complexities of that right now. But understand that you want good airflow, and you want that across all the leaves, all their stomata. So now with the fan, you're getting actually 4 benefits. You're getting the stem strength buildup, you're getting good airflow, carbon dioxide availability to the leaves, good oxygen availability to the soil and the soil microbes, and on top of that, if you overwater these, it has a chance to dry out before you start growing molds or mosses and that kind of stuff. So it helps you achieve that sine wave watering cycle that you want. In the last video you saw how wet the soil was here. It was more like this is, or even like this. Very dark, very wet and heavy and damp. And I haven't watered these in a few days, and now you can see we're just about on the bottom end of the sine wave watering cycle, where we water, we dry out, we water, we dry out, sort of like a sine wave. And that's what we really want to mimic, because that does a whole bunch of things. Number one, that makes the plants kind of resilient to drought because they have to come through dry cycles. That helps build their strength also and stimulates them to react to their environment. Number two, that watering cycle. When you water, you push out all the gas in the soil because the water flows into that soil. It pushes all the gases out, whether it's oxygen, carbon dioxide, nitrogen, whatever. And then when that water recedes, that soil pulls in new gases from the air, whether it's carbon dioxide, oxygen, whatever those microbes need is being exchanged en masse by watering and drying out. That cycle helps drive that. Let's see. So I guess that covers some more basics there. I think what I'm going to do in conjunction with this video is I'm going to do a light foliar drench on these because they're due for it, and I haven't done it yet. So I guess while I'm going to talk about that, I should say when you start plants, you should have biology and trace mineral nutrition present in and on the seed and soil right from the very start. That is the earliest critical point of influence. And if you understand critical points of influence, the earlier the critical point of influence that you're affecting, the greater the yield potential change later in the season, depending on how you allow that gene to express itself. So that said, I'm going to do a light foliar feed. Again, I am not making recommendations for products or diluting ratios or any of that. I'm going to show you what I do in my greenhouse. I'm going to explain why and how I do it, and then you are to draw your own conclusions from there. However, I think it'll help you understand what I do. So ordinarily, if I were starting with just plain compost soil, I would add just a light dose of those trace mineral nutrition that I'm going to do. I would add a light dose of that right with the soil and mix it in. In this case, this is Coast of Maine potting soil, and they have a good portion of the inoculants and trace mineral nutrition in there. They use kelp meal, which has close to 90 trace minerals in it from ocean seawater. Well, it's seaweed, but obviously it grows in seawater, so it has all those 90 trace minerals available, and it's derived from a plant matter, which is excellent. And they also have wood chips in there, which gives you a whole bunch of different fungal components. You need both bacterial and fungal components in good soil for good healthy soil and good nutrient exchange with plants. Remember, this is a symbiotic relationship. The plant feeds the soil and the soil feeds the plant. And if any one of those pieces of the process is out, you don't have the same efficiency. Alright, so I start in Coast of Maine, so I don't start with the trace mineral stuff in there initially, but at this stage in the game, we have cotyledon wedges out, we have our first true leaf set starting, and now it's time to go ahead and give a foliar feed with a little bit of trace mineral nutrition and a little bit of boosting capability. So what am I going to use for that? I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a very, 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 very small amount of a product called Accelerate from Advancing Eco-Agriculture, and that is a complete trace mineral and hormonal support nutritional supplement for plants. It can be used very early in the season to provide trace minerals. It should be done very, very, very sparingly, and even later in the season if you're using it for flower and fruiting crops to help them roll on into flower and fruit fill and finish frame building. Even then, it's very low dilution ratios, very little amount is needed, and that is because, in part, it has hormones in it, and hormones don't need to be in large quantities to have pretty intensive effects on biological systems. So, that said, I'm going to go ahead and figure out my formula here, and then I'm going to show you what I do. Alright, first and foremost, I told you that I did not inoculate the soil initially. That means it is way overdue, as inoculants should really be in and on the seed right from the start, and I did explain the reasoning for that. However, I do use some specialty inoculants, and I always like to make sure that I've got a wide diversity of microbes, both fungi and bacteria and other microbes, present in and on the soil and in and on the seed as early as possible in the season, because they help facilitate the use of the trace mineral nutrition that we're going to continue to provide throughout the season to access the plant's maximum genetic potential. So, without further ado, I'll go into some of the ones that I use. This one is an excellent one. This is from Tanio Biological Incorporated, and I get this from Advancing Eco-Agriculture. It's called Spectrum Extra. It's an excellent inoculant. You should check out their website if you really want to know more about it. And I'll give you a close-up here. If you want, you can pause and read this. But I'm not going to drag you through a whole lot of logistics. I just want to go over the ones I use. This one here is another one called Biogenesis. This is an excellent one also. And this one here is BioCoat Gold. This is also an excellent one. And this also, in addition to having endomycorrhizal fungi, I believe this also has a lot of fungi and bacteria that are good for the phytoplankton or the leaf surface. Believe it or not, it's good to have good biology on the leaf surface as well, as good biology can always displace bad biology when the population is good. And it also helps translate more of that trace mineral nutrition that we're going to be putting on later in the season through foliar feeds. It helps make that available directly to plants, right through their stomata and right through the leaf surface, so they can absorb it directly. That's a big part of the really powerful gains we can take using foliar feeds. The trace mineral nutrition is all excellent, and it does have to be in the right balance, but without the biology present, it really can't be used to its maximum potential. So we want to make sure that biology is always there. So I'll give inoculants of all three of these right now, along with that foliar drench, and I will probably inoculate these a couple more times throughout the season once they go out into the crop fields, and I will incorporate that with another foliar feed, so I don't have to do two separate applications. You can do these in conjunction with foliar feeds. I would not use them in conjunction with any kind of pesticide, and I would never use chlorinated water. Never, ever, even to water plants. Chlorinated or fluoridated water should never be used for watering plants, especially if you're trying to do something organic. It's like the number one thing you can do to kill biology. You think about it, you use chlorine to kill microbes in your bathroom and in your kitchen, on your floors. You put that in the soil, you're going to kill those microbes. Whether they're good microbes or bad microbes, you're going to kill them all. So no chlorine, no fluorine. Make sure that your water doesn't have any of that. And you may think that you're taking it out with filtration. You can get most of it out with filtration, but if you look into Dr. Masaru Emoto's work and water, you'll find that water actually has a memory of the chemicals and many other things that it's exposed to, and so you may get rid of the chemical constituent, but you don't get rid of the signature. I would recommend fresh, pure, clean water. Fresh well water can be okay. You should really make sure your well water is good. You don't want very hard water, you want soft water. If you don't have good well water available, you can capture rainwater. That is an excellent source. And my preferred water, of course, is spring water. And I have spring water right here on the farm, and that's pumped up here from the ram pump. Anyway, so you want to make sure that you're using pure, clean water and that it's not contaminated with any kind of biological agent. Alright, so that said, basically these are usually about a gram. I think these are a gram per acre, the Biogenesis and the BioCoat Gold, and I think this is 50 grams to the acre. I usually just take this little teaspoon and get a little bit in there. Not a tremendous amount, especially for seedlings. It doesn't need to be much. You don't have to have a high volume of it. These will multiply if you provide the right environment for them. You just want to make sure that it's in and on that seed supply, and that it's available to the plants and to the soil to inoculate. And then those populations will grow in accordance and directly related to the plant's growth needs and demands. Alright, so this is an inoculant for seedlings. Very small amount is needed. We're just going to take a little bit of water. Normally if you were doing like a foliar feed on a larger crop, you do this in like say a quart of water, but the watering can is 1 gallon. If we use all of that on these, I'll be surprised. So we're going to go real small scale here. I'm just going to try and figure out how to manage the camera and the measurement here. So that's probably plenty for what I'm doing. Probably overkill. With biological inoculant, I wouldn't be afraid to go a little heavy rather than a little light. Either way, we're not trying to be super precise on this. So that's the Spectrum Extra. I'm going to do a little bit of the BioCoat Gold. Again, it doesn't have to be a lot. You can see that's a very small amount. And then I'm going to do a little bit of the Biogenesis. Same amount or so. I might have to put the camera down for this one. Yep. Same amount. You get the idea. We put them all together. We mix them up. Mix them thoroughly, which is hard to do with the camera in your hand, but you want to mix them up good. Get the powder uniformly distributed in the water, just like anything else. You want good agitation. Ideally the water should be warm, like 70, 80 degrees. The water in that bin is probably 60, but that'll work okay. Not too warm, you don't want to kill anything. You just want to facilitate good growth and life. Okay, so we mix that up, and we're going to let that sit for about 5 or 10 minutes. I'll probably do 10, and that'll let it activate. And once it's activated, we'll go ahead and add that to our watering can, and then we'll add our foliar. We'll add water to the watering can, at least 70%, and then we'll go ahead and add our foliar feeds to that and mix that all together uniformly, and then we'll go and do a foliar feed down over our seedlings. So just a few minutes. Alrighty, so our inoculant has soaked for, well, probably 10 or 15 minutes now. Not super important on time, but you want to really get over 5 to 10 minutes. Ideally, I like a good 15 minutes to sit. So you can see it's a little bit darker than it was before. Other than that, you won't notice much visual change, but know that you have now activated these dormant biological inoculants, and we're going to add them to the Kool-Aid mix. And then I was going to do some accelerate in with this feeding, but I've opted to hold off on that because it's such a powerful product. I don't want to mistakenly overdo it and mess up these seedlings, because they are really happy and healthy and doing well. So along that line, I'm going to err very, very, very much on the side of caution, but we're going to use some products here. Instead of using the Accelerate, I'm just going to use some Micro Pack, which is all the trace minerals basically, and just to make sure that they're in there, I'm going to use a very small amount of this. Remember, trace minerals means trace minerals, very trace amounts, and when it comes to seedlings, we want to be even tracer amounts, if that's a word. So Micro Pack, and I'll use some of the sea stem to help build plant immunity and support good biological life. This is derived from a seaweed, and I'll use some Sea Shield to give a little bit of nitrogen for early phase, as well as calcium and a little potassium. We want to really build good, strong cell walls and very strong plants from the early start, so we can maximize that yield potential that's inherent in the plant, and give it the best environment to use that genetic potential it has, and to express it fully by giving it the best environment. Alright, so I just shook up the Micro Pack, and before I add any of these nutritional supplements, I want to get this water level up pretty good, because we don't want to blast the biology that we just put in here as an inoculant too hard with our foliar feed and end up hurting it before we even get to use it. So we're maybe 3/4 of the can full. Alright, and I'm going to go ahead and measure out a little bit of this. I'll give you a clip of how much I'm measuring out. I just looked at my calculation chart inside, and it looks like I should be using about 22 milliliters of Micro Pack for the entire greenhouse, all the plants. I figured the actual plant square footage to be around 72 square feet. So that's the ratio that I came down to. Given that, I'm basically going to use like a couple drops, really, just to make sure that it's there. Again, I don't want to overdo it early on and damage these seedlings. We want to continue to encourage the best growth we can. So I'll just get a little sample of that up. Okay, so you can see there's a little bit of a bubble in there, so that's maybe 1/4 cc. That's all I'm going to use of that for this, for seedlings. So we'll put that in, and I'll rinse it off in there, and then, especially because I have the biological inoculant before I go into another container, I want to rinse this off real good so we don't inoculate our foliar feed stock before it goes into use. Alright, so that's that one. I'll do some sea stem. Alright, I will just demonstrate real quick because I didn't do this in the last video when I did the foliar feed video. I say shake thoroughly. You want to shake it real thorough. Kind of like you're mixing paint. You want that color real uniform. That's the same concept with these foliar feeds. You want really good, uniform shake. Plus, it's great exercise. Okay, on the C-stem, I'm going to go about a half a cc. And we'll rinse that. And I really need a GoPro or something. Alright, and then we'll do C-shield. Alright, and finally on the C-shield, I'm going to go with about a full cc. Alright, now I'm going to top this water up and stir it up good, and then we'll do the foliar feed. Okay, as with the previous video, I did a very good thorough stir. Everything is mixed uniformly, and I've set these up down on the ground so I can get at them easily and get a nice uniform shower distribution on them. It's going to be hard for me to do that while holding the camera, so maybe I'll set the camera up on something and you can watch from a different perspective. Okay, I think that's a decent angle. So, a nice uniform shower on over everything. You want everything to get about the same amount. And of course you can go a little heavier on plants that are a little bit more mature. A little lighter on plants that are a little less mature. You want everything to get the whole leaf and soil surface coated. You want enough to wet that soil down a little bit. There you go, and then go back quick to make sure we're uniform. And there's going to be a little left over on this. And I did not hit those other two flats that aren't up yet because it would be too early to do that. So that's it. Done deal. That's a foliar drench. Pretty straightforward and simple. Once you understand the concepts behind it and the techniques, it's really easy to do. And I guess I'll do an update to this video in a few days, and you'll see the explosion of growth that results from this. Alright, I think I've covered everything I wanted to cover for this segment. I thank you for watching the Farmacy Seeds Network. If you have any questions or comments, don't be afraid to do so down below. I always try to respond to comments. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and don't forget to click that notification button if you want to get updates regularly. Thanks again for watching the Farmacy Seeds Network.